Every night, the maid gave herself to the lonely millionaire. Until one day, everything changed. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Every night, the maid gave herself to the lonely millionaire. Until one day, everything changed. Lila had always felt out of place. As she moved through the luxurious hallways of Sebastian Williams' grand estate, she couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between her worn shoes and his polished floors. Her second-hand dress clung awkwardly to her thin frame, and she was constantly aware of how out of place she felt in a world so far removed from her own. She had come from a small apartment with peeling paint, working long hours as a maid to make ends meet. Sebastian, on the other hand, was a millionaire who seemed to live in a world where problems were solved with money and connections. But despite the wealth, Sebastian was a lonely man. He didn't have friends, only colleagues and business partners. And somehow, his loneliness had driven him to make an unusual proposal. "I need someone to be here, to fill the emptiness in this house," he had said one night after a long dinner. A companion, but no expectations, no love, no attachment. Just someone to share my space. Lila had hesitated, but with her own troubles mounting, her younger brother sick, the bills piling up, the stress of being constantly on the edge, she had agreed. The arrangement was clear. Pretend to be his partner, accompany him to events, share the space, but never let it become anything more. They both knew the deal. It was cold, it was transactional, but it was all they had. Every night, she gave herself to him in the same way she had to give herself to everything else in life, because she had no other choice. But something had started to change. Despite their arrangement, Lila found herself caring for Sebastian in ways she hadn't expected. There were moments when she would catch him staring out the window, lost in thought, and she would wonder if he was thinking about the life he had left behind or the future he couldn't seem to touch. She would talk to him about her day, about her dreams of becoming something more than just a maid. Sebastian never responded much. He was always reserved, detached. But over time, his silence began to speak volumes. One evening, after a charity gala, something shifted. Sebastian had been unusually distant, but as they sat in the quiet of the car ride home, Lila felt a change in the air. He was no longer just the cold, distant millionaire. For a moment, she saw a glimpse of vulnerability, of someone who needed more than just a companion for appearances. She could feel his eyes on her, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if he was just playing along anymore. But as quickly as it came, the moment passed. The next morning, Sebastian left for an overseas business trip without a word, and Lila was once again left in the silence of the mansion. It wasn't long after that the truth about their arrangement began to unravel. Lila was invited to a gala, a place where she had always felt out of place. And there, in the crowd, she saw a side of Sebastian she had never known. He was introduced as the guest of honor, the millionaire tech mogul who had been quietly reshaping industries from behind the scenes. Lila's heart sank as the realization hit. He had never been just a lonely man. He was a powerful force in the business world, a man who could have anyone he wanted, and yet, he had chosen her. But why? The answer was elusive, and the betrayal stung, even if she had never truly expected anything more. The trust that had begun to form between them shattered in that moment. She ran out of the gala, her mind spinning, her emotions a tangled mess of confusion and hurt. But when she got home, she found something unexpected waiting for her. A letter from Sebastian, an apology, and an invitation to meet him at the gallery. "You deserve to know the truth, Lila," it read. "I was wrong to hide this from you. Let me show you who I really am." As Lila stood there, holding the letter from Sebastian in her hands, her heart was racing. She couldn't believe what she was reading. He had apologized, admitted his mistake, and invited her to meet him at the gallery. The very idea felt like a dream, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. She had been in this position before, feeling like the world was beyond her reach, like she didn't belong. But this was different. She folded the letter carefully, feeling a mix of excitement and hesitation, and made her way to the gallery, her mind racing with questions. When she arrived, the soft glow of the gallery's lights illuminated the polished floors, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of anticipation. She saw Sebastian standing at the front, looking as sharp and composed as ever. But something in his eyes had changed. There was a warmth there now, a kind of openness she had never seen before. She walked toward him slowly, her footsteps echoing in the quiet space. He turned as he heard her approach, and for a moment, they just stood there, looking at each other. The silence between them felt heavy, but it was different from the cold, awkward silence they had shared before. This time, it felt like there was something unspoken, a connection that was beginning to form. "Lila," he said softly, his voice quieter than usual. "I know I've made mistakes. I've been closed off, but I've realized something. You've changed the way I see things. The way I see myself." His words hit her harder than she expected. She had never imagined that he would feel this way, that her presence in his life could have such an impact. She had always been the one giving, always the one sacrificing, but she had never asked herself if it could be the other way around. "Sebastian," she replied, her voice catching slightly. "I don't know what to say. Everything is so unexpected." He stepped closer, his expression sincere. "I know it's a lot to take in, but I want to be honest with you now. I care about you, Lila. I have for a long time, and I'm sorry it took me so long to admit it." For the first time in a long while, Lila felt a glimmer of hope. It was as if the walls she had built around herself were starting to crumble. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness could lead to this moment. But here she was, standing in front of the man who had once seemed so distant and untouchable. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why now?" Sebastian took a deep breath and ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture that seemed so unlike him. "Because you showed me what really matters," he said, his voice low. "You were real with me, even when I wasn't. You didn't pretend to be something you weren't, and that's something I admire. I've been living in this bubble, thinking I had everything under control, but I was wrong. I was lonely, Lila, and I realized I don't want to be alone anymore." Lila's heart fluttered as she processed his words. She had always seen him as the strong, confident millionaire, the man who had everything figured out. But now, she saw a side of him that was vulnerable, that was just as human as she was. And for the first time, she felt like she was seeing the real Sebastian. "I don't know what this is, or where it's going," she said slowly, "but I'm willing to find out. I think I've been running from my own feelings for so long." Sebastian reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers, Lila. I just want a chance to make things right, to show you that I can be the man you deserve." In that moment, Lila felt the weight of all her fears and doubts lift. She had spent so long thinking that she didn't deserve love, that she wasn't worthy of happiness. But standing here with Sebastian, she realized how wrong she had been. Maybe this wasn't just about him. Maybe it was about her too. "Okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Okay, I'll give you that chance." As their hands intertwined, something shifted between them. It wasn't just about the contract anymore, or the cold, transactional arrangement they had made. It was something deeper, something real. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Lila felt like she wasn't walking it alone. She had found someone who truly saw her, someone who cared. And maybe, just maybe, she could start to believe in the possibility of a future filled with love, trust, and a family of their own. After that evening at the gallery, things between Lila and Sebastian began to shift in ways neither of them had expected. It was like they had both stepped into a new chapter of their lives, a chapter filled with uncertainty, but also the potential for something real, something deep. Sebastian kept his promise to Lila, and little by little, he started to let his guard down, allowing her to see sides of him that no one else had. Their relationship was no longer just a contract. It had evolved into something more genuine, something that felt like it could last. They spent more time together, not just at events or business meetings, but in the quiet moments at home, where they could truly talk and connect. Lila began to open up too, sharing her dreams and fears with Sebastian, and in return, he shared his own struggles with loneliness and the pressure of living up to his family's expectations. There were moments when they would sit together on the balcony of his penthouse, watching the city below, and talk about everything and nothing. In those moments, Lila could see a side of Sebastian that was kind, thoughtful, and, for the first time, vulnerable. But as much as their connection deepened, doubts still lingered in Lila's mind. She had been burned before, and the thought of getting too close, of giving her heart away completely, terrified her. She wondered if Sebastian truly understood her, if he could ever fully accept her past, the life she had come from. One evening, after they had spent hours talking, Sebastian turned to her, his expression serious. "Lila, I need you to understand something," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I've hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. But what I feel for you is real. I want you to know that, and I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere." Lila looked at him, her heart pounding. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this was more than just a fleeting moment, but the fear still held her back. "How can you be sure?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. "How can you be sure that what we have is real?" Sebastian took her hand in his touch gentle but firm. "Because every time I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally living the life I was meant to live. You've opened up a part of me that I didn't even know existed. You've made me realize that there's more to life than just business deals and money. There's love, and there's connection, and there's you." Lila's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard him speak like this before, and in that moment, she knew he meant every word. But there was still one thing she needed to hear, something that would give her the courage to fully let go of her doubts. "I need to know that you're not just doing this because you feel sorry for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to know that this is what you truly want, that you're not just trying to fix something broken in yourself." Sebastian didn't hesitate. "I'm not trying to fix anything, Lila. I'm trying to build something real with you. I'm trying to make things right, not just for you, but for me too. I don't need to fix you. I need you." The sincerity in his words hit Lila harder than she expected. For the first time, she felt truly seen. Not as a maid, not as someone who was just there to fill a void, but as someone who was worthy of love, someone who was worth the risk. Slowly, hesitantly, Lila nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "Okay," she said softly. "I believe you." From that moment on, things between them changed. They no longer lived in the shadow of the contract they had signed. Their relationship was no longer a business arrangement. It was something that was rooted in mutual respect, care, and, finally, love. As the days passed, Lila found herself falling for Sebastian in ways she hadn't expected. And for the first time in a long while, she felt like she was truly living, not just surviving. The future was uncertain, but it no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a journey they would take together. As the days passed, Sebastian and Lila grew closer, but the lingering uncertainty remained. They had both made mistakes, and the scars of their past were not so easily erased. But despite the doubts, there was something undeniable between them, something that neither of them could ignore. Lila had never expected this, never expected to find love in such an unconventional way. But here she was, standing by Sebastian's side, no longer the maid, but a woman who had earned her place in his world. Sebastian, for his part, was more than just the lonely millionaire he had once been. Lila had given him something he hadn't even realized he was missing, a sense of belonging, a connection that went beyond business deals and superficial encounters. Still, the road ahead was not without its challenges. Sebastian's family, who had once seen him as the perfect heir to the family empire, were less than thrilled with his new relationship. They didn't understand why he had chosen a woman like Lila, a woman who didn't come from their world, and they made their disapproval known at every opportunity. One evening, after a family dinner where the tension had been palpable, Sebastian turned to Lila as they walked back to his car. "I'm sorry about tonight," he said, his voice low. "I wish they could understand." Lila smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "It's okay," she said. "I didn't expect them to understand, and honestly, I'm not sure I care." Sebastian's eyes softened as he looked at her. "I care," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I care about you, and that's what matters to me." Lila felt a surge of warmth at his words, but the doubt still lingered in the back of her mind. Could they truly make it work? Could they overcome the expectations of the world around them and build a life together? The questions weighed heavily on her, but for the first time, she felt ready to face them. She had always been strong, always found a way to survive, but now, she was ready to fight for something more. "I think we can," she said quietly, meeting his gaze. "As long as we're honest with each other and ourselves, we can make it work." Sebastian smiled, his face lighting up in a way that made her heart flutter. Then let's make it work, he said. And so they did. It wasn't easy. Nothing worth having ever is. But little by little, they built a life together, one that was filled with love, trust, and respect. Lila found herself not only growing closer to Sebastian, but to the people who mattered most in his life, even his family, who began to see the woman he had chosen, and they slowly started to accept her. As time went on, the shadows of their pasts began to fade, and the future they had once feared began to feel like a possibility, a dream that they could both reach for. One afternoon, months later, after they had settled into their new life together, Sebastian took Lila to a quiet park where they had first talked about their hopes and fears. He took her hand and led her to a bench, sitting down beside her. "Lila," he said softly, "you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. I never thought I'd find someone like you." Lila's heart skipped a beat as she looked at him, her hand still resting in his. "You've changed mine too," she said quietly. "I never thought I'd find someone who saw me, really saw me, for who I am." Sebastian smiled, his eyes shining with sincerity. "Then I guess we're both lucky," he said, before pausing for a moment, his expression becoming more serious. "Lila, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I know we've been through a lot, and I know there's still so much to figure out. But I want you to be by my side, always. Will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, and for a moment, everything else faded away. It was as if time had stopped, and in that moment, Lila realized something. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living, and for the first time in her life, she was ready to take a leap of faith. She looked into Sebastian's eyes, her heart full of love and hope. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." And with that, everything changed. They had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, and they had built a life together, one that was full of love, trust, and the promise of a future filled with possibility. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. The months that followed were nothing short of magical for Lila and Sebastian. Their relationship grew deeper, built on a foundation of trust, mutual respect, and love. The wedding planning was in full swing, though neither of them cared for the extravagant details. It wasn't about the lavish event. It was about the promise they were making to each other. It was about two people who had come from different worlds, yet found a way to build something beautiful together. Lila had always dreamed of a life full of warmth, love, and family, but she never expected it to come in the form of a man like Sebastian. He had shown her the world beyond her wildest imagination, but more importantly, he had shown her how to believe in herself again. Sebastian, for his part, had always been focused on his business, his empire. He had spent so many years building his success, but it wasn't until Lila came into his life that he realized what he had been missing. She had brought color into his world, and for the first time, he understood that true happiness wasn't found in wealth, but in the people you choose to surround yourself with. As they stood together at their wedding, looking at each other with tears in their eyes, they both knew that this was just the beginning. Their journey together had only just begun, and they were ready to face whatever came next. Lila looked at Sebastian, her heart full, her eyes sparkling. She had never imagined a future like this, a future where love was real, where she was valued not for what she could give, but for who she was. And Sebastian, with his usual quiet confidence, had given her the greatest gift of all, the chance to believe in herself and in them. After the ceremony, they stood on the balcony of their estate, watching the sun set over the horizon. The world seemed to stretch out before them, full of endless possibilities. For the first time in a long time, Lila felt like she had everything she had ever wanted, a loving partner, a family she could call her own, and the freedom to chase her dreams. Sebastian took her hand, pulling her close, and kissed the top of her head. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" he murmured. Lila smiled, her heart full. "Yes, but we still have so much more to discover." They both knew that their pasts would always be a part of them, that the road to happiness hadn't been easy, but they also knew that they had each other now, and that was all they needed. Together, they were unstoppable. And so, as the night sky stretched above them, full of stars, they looked forward to a future they would build together, one day at a time, with love, trust, and the kind of happiness they had once thought impossible. The future was bright, and with each other by their side, they knew there was nothing they couldn't face. To the rest of our lives, Sebastian said softly, his voice filled with emotion. Together, Lila leaned in, her heart overflowing. Together, she whispered, sealing their promise with a kiss. It wasn't just a marriage. It was the beginning of a new life, one filled with the kind of love and understanding that could only grow stronger with time. And in that moment, under the stars, they both knew that the best was yet to come. As the weeks passed, Lila and Sebastian settled into their new life together. But just as everything seemed perfect, life had a way of throwing curveballs. Their marriage, which had started as a beautiful, unexpected love story, now had to face real-world challenges. Sebastian's business was booming, and with that came more responsibilities. He had always been driven by success, but now, more than ever, he realized the importance of balance. There were days when his attention was consumed by meetings, calls, and decisions that affected thousands of people. Lila understood the demands of his career, but it didn't mean she was immune to the isolation that came with it. She missed the quiet nights when they would just talk for hours or sit together in silence, enjoying each other's company. But now, there were nights when Sebastian would come home late, his mind still racing with the weight of his company's needs. It was a struggle, one that neither of them had anticipated, but they were both determined to make it work. One evening, after a particularly long day, Sebastian returned home late, his face drawn with exhaustion. Lila was waiting for him, sitting on the balcony where they had shared their first kiss as husband and wife. The city lights below twinkled in the distance, a soft reminder of how far they had come. "You've been working nonstop," Lila said softly, her voice filled with concern. "You need to take care of yourself." Sebastian sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "I know," he admitted, his voice heavy. "But there's so much at stake. I can't afford to let go." Lila stood up and walked toward him, placing her hand on his. "I get it," she said. "But we need you too, Sebastian. Not just as a businessman, but as my husband. We can't let the work consume us." Sebastian looked at her, his heart aching. He had never imagined that his success would come at the cost of his personal life. "I'm sorry, Lila. I never wanted to push you away." She smiled gently, cupping his face with her hands. "You haven't pushed me away," she said softly. "But we need to find a way to make it work. Together." For a moment, the weight of their situation hung in the air, but it was in that silence that they both realized something. They had come this far, and they were stronger together than apart. It wasn't about balancing work and love perfectly. It was about finding a rhythm that worked for them, even if it wasn't always easy. Over the following weeks, Sebastian began to make changes. He set boundaries, ensuring that his work didn't consume his every waking moment. He started taking weekends off, dedicating that time to Lila and their growing bond. They went on trips together, explored new places, and, most importantly, spent time just being with each other. Lila had always been the one to encourage him to slow down, to enjoy the little things, but now, she saw that Sebastian was beginning to understand the importance of those moments too. One afternoon, while walking through a park, Sebastian turned to Lila with a serious expression. "I've been thinking," he said. "I don't want to keep working like this forever. I want to spend more time with you, with our family. I want to find a way to make a difference in people's lives, not just in business, but in how I live my life too." Lila's heart swelled with pride as she looked at him. This was the man she had fallen in love with, the one who was willing to change for the better, for their future. "I'm so proud of you," she said softly. "We can do this together." And from that day forward, Sebastian made it his mission to find a balance between work and life, between success and love. He learned that his worth wasn't tied to his business empire, but to the relationships he built, to the love he gave, and to the family he created. Lila and Sebastian's journey had only just begun, but they knew that as long as they had each other, there was nothing they couldn't face together. The future was still uncertain, but now, it felt like a future filled with endless possibilities, love, and a sense of peace they had both longed for. Their love had been tested in ways neither of them had expected, but they had come out stronger on the other side, ready to face whatever the world had in store for them, hand in hand. As time went on, Lila and Sebastian's life together seemed almost perfect. They had learned to navigate the challenges that had once seemed so overwhelming, finding a delicate balance between work, family, and their growing love for one another. But just as they had begun to feel like they had it all figured out, a sudden change in their lives tested everything they had worked so hard to build. Sebastian had always been a man of strong conviction, a man who built his empire through determination and a sharp business mind. But now, he found himself facing a decision that had the potential to alter everything, one that could tear apart the peaceful life they had created. It all started when a new opportunity came knocking at Sebastian's door. A rival company, one that had been steadily growing in influence, offered to buy out a portion of his business. The deal was lucrative, more money than he could ever imagine, but it came with a catch. The offer would require him to relocate the entire operation overseas, essentially uprooting everything they had built together. Sebastian wrestled with the decision for days, knowing that this was the kind of opportunity that only came once in a lifetime. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that he would be giving up the very thing he had worked so hard for: his family, his home, and the life he had promised to Lila. When he finally sat down to discuss the offer with her, he could see the worry in her eyes. "I don't want to make a decision that will take us away from everything we've built," he said, his voice filled with uncertainty. "But this is a chance for the business to grow even bigger, to become something that could provide for us forever." Lila listened carefully, her mind racing as she processed the situation. She knew how important the business was to him, but she also knew how much they had sacrificed to create a life of their own. She loved the life they had in the city, the home they had built together, and the sense of stability they had worked so hard to establish. "I understand, Sebastian," she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "But I also know how much we've both changed. We've worked hard to find balance, to find each other. I'm scared that if we take this step, we'll lose what's most important." Sebastian's heart ached as he looked at her. He had never wanted to lose her, never wanted to jeopardize their love for the sake of ambition. He reached out and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I don't want to lose you, Lila. You're everything to me." She smiled softly, though the worry in her eyes remained. "I know, Sebastian, and I love you. But we have to figure out what's best for us, together." Over the next few days, they talked endlessly, weighing the pros and cons, trying to imagine a future that didn't involve this big move. They realized that the life they had was precious, and no amount of money or business success could replace the happiness they had found in each other. Finally, after much soul-searching, Sebastian made his decision. He turned down the offer, choosing to stay in the city with Lila, to focus on the business they had built together. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but he knew it was the right choice. The relief that washed over both of them when the decision was made was palpable. For the first time in months, they were able to sit together without the looming stress of the business hanging over them. They went for long walks, laughed together, and simply enjoyed the quiet moments that had once felt so out of reach. "I'm so proud of you," Lila said one evening as they sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. "You made the right choice. I knew you would." Sebastian smiled, pulling her closer. "I'm proud of us," he said softly. "We've come so far, and we're stronger than ever." And so, as they continued to build their life together, Lila and Sebastian learned an important lesson. Sometimes, the greatest success isn't measured by the money you make or the businesses you build. It's measured by the love you give, the family you create, and the happiness you find along the way. They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, side by side, stronger than ever before. Months went by, and with each passing day, Lila and Sebastian's love grew deeper. They had found a rhythm that worked for both of them, and life, despite its usual challenges, felt more balanced than ever before. The business was thriving, their relationship was strong, and they were even starting to think about the future in ways they never had before. But just when it seemed like they had everything figured out, a new test came that neither of them could have predicted. Sebastian's father, who had always been distant and cold, called him one evening with news that shook him to the core. "I'm retiring," his father announced, his voice as stern as ever. "And I want you to take over the company." Sebastian felt the weight of his father's words press down on him. For years, he had been working hard to build something that would make his father proud, but he had always known that his father's approval was just out of reach. Now, the time had come, and Sebastian was faced with a decision that would affect not only his business but also his personal life. Lila could sense his unease, The way his shoulders tensed when he put the phone down, the distant look in his eyes. She had seen him work so hard to escape the shadow of his father's expectations, and now it seemed like those very expectations were pulling him back in. "Sebastian, what are you going to do?" she asked gently, sitting beside him on the couch. Sebastian ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts. "I don't know, Lila," he said quietly. "I've spent my whole life trying to get away from his influence, and now it feels like I'm being pulled right back into it." Lila placed a hand on his, her touch grounding him in the moment. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to," she said softly. "This is your life, Sebastian. You have the power to make the choices that are best for you, not for anyone else." Sebastian looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude. "But what about the business?" he asked. "What about everything we've worked for?" Lila smiled gently, her eyes full of understanding. "The business is important, but it's not everything. We've built something incredible together, Sebastian, and that's what matters most. If you take over your father's company, it's going to be a massive responsibility. But if you do it for the wrong reasons, it might take away the things that truly make you happy." Sebastian took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words sink in. He had always wanted to prove himself to his father, to show that he could be more than just a successful businessman. But now, he realized that the person he needed to prove himself to was himself. "You're right," he said after a long pause. "I've spent so much time chasing something that I thought would make me happy, but I've already found happiness with you, with our life together." Lila's heart swelled with love for him. She had always known that he was capable of more than just business success, but hearing him say it aloud made her heart feel full. "So what are you going to do?" she asked softly. Sebastian looked at her, his face filled with determination. "I'm going to turn down the offer," he said firmly. "I've already made my decision. I want to build a life with you, Lila, not with the weight of my father's expectations hanging over me." And just like that, the decision was made. Sebastian called his father the next day, politely turning down the offer and explaining that he had other plans for his future. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was one that he knew he needed to have. As the days passed, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. For the first time, he was truly living for himself, not for anyone else. He was free to focus on what truly mattered: his love for Lila, their life together, and the future they were building. They spent the following months traveling together, exploring new places, and deepening their bond. They had learned that no amount of wealth or success could ever compare to the joy of being with the person you loved, and they were determined to make the most of every moment they had. As they stood together one evening, looking out over the city skyline, Sebastian turned to Lila with a smile. "I'm glad we made the decision we did," he said softly. "I feel like we're finally free to live our lives the way we want to." Lila smiled, her heart full. "Me too," she said. "I wouldn't change a thing." And so, with the weight of expectations behind them, Lila and Sebastian moved forward, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the future had in store for them. Together, they knew that no challenge was too big, no obstacle too great. As long as they had each other, they could handle anything life threw their way. As time went by, Lila and Sebastian's life together grew richer in ways they hadn't imagined. They had built something solid and beautiful, something that had withstood the trials of their past, and was only growing stronger. Their love had been tested more than once, and every time, they emerged on the other side, more certain of each other and more committed to the life they were creating. But just as they had found their rhythm, life presented them with yet another unexpected challenge. This time, it came in the form of a health scare. One evening, after returning from a short getaway, Sebastian wasn't feeling well. At first, he brushed it off as exhaustion from their busy schedules. But the symptoms persisted, and Lila, concerned, insisted he get checked out. The doctor's appointment seemed like just another routine visit until the results came in. The diagnosis was unsettling. Sebastian had been pushing his body too hard, working nonstop, neglecting his health in the pursuit of success. It was a wake-up call, one that reminded him just how fragile life could be and how much he had taken for granted. "I'm sorry, Lila," Sebastian said one evening, sitting on the couch, his face pale as he looked at her. "I've been so focused on everything else, on the business, on trying to make sure we have everything we need, that I didn't realize I was neglecting the most important thing, my health and you." Lila sat beside him, her hand on his. She had always been the one to hold everything together, the one who reminded him to slow down, but now she saw how much he had been carrying on his own. "It's not just you," she said softly. "We're in this together, Sebastian, and you don't have to carry it all on your own. We need to take care of each other, not just the business." Sebastian looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Lila. You've always been the one who's been there for me, no matter what. I'm sorry I didn't realize how much I needed to take better care of myself, for both of us." Lila smiled, though her heart was heavy. She had always known that Sebastian's drive for success could sometimes overshadow everything else, but now, it was time to make a change. They both realized that no amount of money, success, or achievements mattered if they didn't have their health, their love, and each other. It was a turning point for them, one that forced them to reassess their priorities. Over the next few months, Sebastian slowed down. He took more time for himself, went to the gym regularly, and most importantly, spent more time with Lila, focusing on their relationship and their future. He began to delegate more at work, trusting the people around him to help him shoulder the responsibilities. Lila, too, found herself rediscovering parts of her life that she had put aside, her passion for art, her desire to travel, and the joy of simple moments with the man she loved. Their relationship blossomed in ways it never had before. They didn't just talk about their dreams, they started living them. They took vacations together, explored new places, and made memories that would last a lifetime. They had learned to let go of the constant pressure of success and embrace the present, the here and now, and the joy of being together. One evening, as they sat on their balcony, watching the sun set over the city, Sebastian turned to Lila with a smile that spoke volumes. "You were right," he said softly. "It's not about what we achieve or how much we have. It's about being here, right now, together." Lila smiled, her heart full. "I've always known that," she said. "And I'm so glad you do now, too." In that moment, everything felt perfect. Their love, once so fragile and uncertain, had become a strong, unshakable bond. They had faced every challenge life had thrown at them, and through it all, they had learned that the greatest gift was not the success or the wealth they had accumulated, but the love they shared. They were finally at peace, ready to face whatever the future had in store for them, knowing that together, they could handle anything. "To us," Sebastian said, raising his glass. "To our love and the life we've built." Lila smiled, her eyes sparkling. "To us," she echoed. And as they clinked their glasses, they knew that the best was yet to come.